you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much. Minister of Communications, Works, Physical Development, Public Utilities, and ICT from Grenada, and Chairman of the ECTEL Council of Ministers, the Honorable Gregory Boyne. Minister of Information, Science, Telecommunications, and Technology of the Commonwealth of Dominica, the Honorable Calvadaro. Minister of the Public Service, Sustainable Development, Energy, Science, and Technology of St. Lucia, Senator, the Honorable Dr. James Fletcher. Minister of Information, Broadcasting, Telecommunications, and Information Technology of Antigua and Barbuda, the Honorable Melford Nicholas. Minister of Communications, Works, Energy, and Labor of Montserrat, the Honorable Paul Lewis. Members of the ECTEL Board of Directors, ECTEL Honoree, former Minister of Public Utilities and first Chairman of the ECTEL Council of Ministers, Mr. Calix George, Managing Director of ECTEL, Mr. Ember Charles, and TRC Commissioners, Directors and Staff, Management and Staff of ECTEL, representatives of regulators from the Caribbean region, from Anguilla, Bahamas, Jamaica, St. Martin, Trinidad and Tobago, media representatives, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. I have to tell you that I have a Minister of ICT, Energy, etc., whom I respect and admire greatly. And I take it that you will appreciate this even more because he gave you all the explanations why I must leave immediately after I've delivered. You couldn't want more of a minister, could you? I mean, he cast the thing very, very well. Thank you so much, Minister. Distinguished ministers, ladies and gentlemen, you have come to St. Lucia right on the heels of what is one of the Caribbean's largest festivals, the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival. I don't know how many of you were able to profit the proximity of this conference and the weekend's festivities, but if you did, I salute your attendance, attention, and if I may say alertness the morning after. I'm impressed. By the time I got in here, nearly everyone was already in their seats. That's a good sign. Invariably, at mass crowd events such as these, with thousands of persons in a single space, our mobile network capacity at one location becomes insufficient for the volume of data and calls that are being placed. And there will be a number of anxious people upset that they can't download the song they just listened to off iTunes. But the importance of such mobile networks, the power of being able to make a call to find your lost friends, the ability to capture a selfie with you and your favorite artists and show off on Facebook to the chagrin of all your friends who aren't there, these are powerful tools that have become customary and emblematic of today's Caribbean society. So in a way, we celebrate this morning what was being celebrated at St. Lucia Jazz in the tens of thousands of messages, voice notes, and calls placed during that event. The mobile penetration rates of every member country exceeds 100%. And we see it and celebrate it at events of grand scale such as these. And so it is quite fitting that we honor those warriors of liberalization who fought the good fight, toiled the long hours, burned the midnight oil, and negotiated in the interest of the future development of our countries, which we enjoy today. In a special way, St. Lucia championed these reforms, and none other than former Minister for Public Utilities and former Chair of the ECTEL Council of Ministers, Mr. Calix George, was that he was able to stay the course. Calix brought to the negotiating table clear vision, unquestioned focus, hard-nosed determination, and indomitable conviction. He was, in every sense, the perfect man for the job. Once or twice, he brought me grief, but when I look back, I do not think we would have been where we are today without him. I salute him. We say thank you to him and the early ECTEL pioneers, Donnie DeFreitas, Jennifer Astafan, and many more. You see, 15 years ago, when these 5 small island states solidified the liberalization of telecommunications through the ECTEL Treaty signed in Grenada, telecommunications was at a cusp, and we needed to be riding at the peak of the wave and not remain in the backwash of technology. We were still back then just embracing an M-world, a mobile society where transactions are real-time and ubiquitous, not limited to where you might be. Things continue to change at a rapid rate. 15 years ago, voice over IP was still seen as taboo by providers. The big transition in our mobile market was a shift from TDMA to GSM cellular systems and handsets. There were no touch screens, and for that matter, screens weren't designed for viewing photos or videos either. Wi-Fi, which only became used as a commercial term in 1999, was not in the lingo of the average person, and a hotspot was a place you'd likely avoid, not search everywhere for. A tablet in St. Lucia was still something sweet and edible made of coconut, and dial-up was just in the process. ADSL standards were still fresh, and the average user was still lucky if they simply had dial-up at their homes. Yet, we knew then, as we know now, the power of telecommunications. We knew that our populations were being shortchanged due to the absence of competition and effective market regulation. We knew too that we had backward and outdated technology. The reality prior to the turn of the millennium was quite different from what thankfully obtains today. If we take St. Lucia as a case in point, for fixed line calls, a small island of 238 square miles was divided into as many as 8 districts. Out-of-district calls were charged trunk rates. These rates were even higher than what is being charged today for mobile calls. This was the state of fixed line calls. My goodness, we have come a long way. You have made history for our region. St. Lucia, in fact, under this monopolistic environment, was the highest grossing per capita profit center in the world for the incumbent. You would then understand our rightful fare towards any new environment where one company monopolizes the market. There clearly at that time existed a telecommunications environment that was adverse to growth of economy and society. But we took comfort in the words of poet Ben Jonson that, quote, "He who knows not adversity knows not his strength," unquote. So the government that I led back then mustered the strength and the will to change the system. We had to take the bull by the horns, and it called for determination, grit, will, courage. And the reality was the tactics by the incumbent provider were not always pleasant, but they were to some extent expected. I have so many memories of that encounter. But I shall never forget that at a meeting of the heads of government in Barbados, the news reached us that the provider had issued a statement threatening to pull out of St. Lucia and the Eastern Caribbean. I saw the consternation on the faces of my colleagues, almost as if to say to me, what on earth had St. Lucia got us into? It was from that meeting we issued a statement to the effect that if the provider touched one, then it would have to touch all. We persevered. Through the OECS Telecommunications Reform Project, we established the legislative and regulatory framework supported by the technical and administrative capacity to undertake what was a monumental shift in public utilities regulation in the sub-region. Our 5 states, St. Kitts and Nevis, Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada and St. Lucia, and I might add Grenada and Carriacou, continued to show that we could come together for a common cause to achieve common good for all our people. Since 2000, we laid the foundation for what has become a worldwide model multi-state regulatory framework. As I have alluded to, the communications landscape has drastically changed over the past 15 years, and ECTEL has played a major part of facilitating this. And while the technologies continue to change rapidly, the principles of the telecommunications liberalization and competition remain the same. These principles include 1, market fairness, competition, and protection of new entrants. 2, promotion of investment by service providers in new and appropriate technologies. 3, consumer protection. 4, supporting and providing social good, including universal access for services. And 5, seeking affordability for the majority of the market so as to promote economic growth. However, this industry is now IP-driven. The internet has become the new platform of transaction, surpassing the legacy voice networks. It is all about data capacity, speed, and reliability, and thus the demands for data-rich photos, videos, and other content continue to drive the bandwidth requirements of the average household and the average person upwards. The broadband era is here and will only become more demanding on providers. The push to deliver more for less, the drive of innovation and competition will develop new generations of mobile, wired, and wireless solutions, inclusive of richer and more dynamic applications and content. To put this more pellucid by way of figures, let me quickly refer to the 2014 Cisco Visual Networking Index report. Growth in global mobile data traffic grew year on year by a remarkable 69%. What is equally staggering is that traffic is 30 times greater than traffic in the year 2000 when we signed the ECTEL Treaty. Nearly 500 million handsets were added globally to the market, and smart devices represented, while representing a quarter of all handsets, nearly 90% of all data. It is predicted that by 2019, 3 out of every 5 devices will be smart. It will, of course, mean more streaming of videos, more downloads, more Skype, and more bandwidth. We must expect that the trend will be for increased demand on both wired and wireless broadband services. Currently, nearly 50% of homes have internet subscription in St. Lucia, and this number is growing in part, I would like to believe, due to government policy. Like some other states here, St. Lucia has introduced a program in our secondary schools through which we have provided a laptop to every child in a selected form. I know that St. Vincent has gone even further, providing laptops to primary schools. Thus far, not primary, and secondary, yes. Thus far, we have impacted 3 years of students at secondary level, with nearly 10,000 more units being provided to students and teachers over the past 3 years. Many parents have thus felt ever more compelled to have their children connected. These interventions have led to fascinating changes in the market. Many people no longer have a fixed telephone line at their home, but they have internet, often provided through a wireless modem. Today, international voice traffic for St. Lucia is about half what it used to be 5 years ago. There can be no doubt, therefore, the reasons for the downward trend in the number of minutes made on international and domestic calls, as many more citizens and companies benefit from voice over IP solutions from Vonage and Magic Jack, Skype, Facebook, and now even calls on WhatsApp. A 2012 feasibility study undertaken by the Caribbean Regional Communications Infrastructure Project, CARCIP, looking at the strengths and gaps of the broadband backbone in St. Lucia, Grenada, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, suggests that the current infrastructure appears adequate for the future. With the presence of the Universal Service Fund, investments can be made to support access into underserviced communities and schools. However, it appears that where we are lagging behind in our sub-region is in content or application development. We have fallen into the very quiet trap of consumers of data, not contributors to it. It is the trap of being the spectator and not the actor or performers. Even while we rightly and recently established an internet exchange point in St. Lucia, meaning that local content did not have to be looped out of the country to reach another person in St. Lucia, the truth is our content generation is still quite low. It also shows in the low uptake of e-commerce solutions by the local private sector. Our people are definitely purchasing online at remarkable rates, enough to see the rise of many local shipping agencies taking advantage of this. However, many of our companies still lag behind in web presence and being able to provide online services. This was raised, in fact, at a recent Caribbean Growth Forum Transparency and Accountability Workshop here in St. Lucia. It says that our people are still not maximizing the opportunities that are available to them. And in all honesty, this is not only a failing of the private sector, but also of the public sector. While we have made advancements in applying ICT to our agencies, we are still far behind the developed world. Therefore, there can be no complacency. And if I might add in passing, there's a fascinating development even within the United Kingdom that now decision makers in the public service in the UK and in companies are becoming concerned that their employees are receiving too many emails, and the consequence is that they're taking all the emails home, or they've been able to access their emails at the expense of family time and social interaction in the community and otherwise. The suggestion is now one of overload, and that what we thought was a complete solution to a problem is now having social consequences. But that, of course, I leave for you to reflect on, not to be prescriptive at all. And certainly, as both public and private sectors become more connected and are providing more services online, it means the demand for broadband will only continue to increase exponentially. I must say that this is a paradigm shift that all parts of society and economy must make, coming to appreciate the new platforms that are available for advertising, sales, and operations. And I say this from the perspective of a politician. I post my own messages on Facebook, and it is indeed a powerful tool we have through social media to change how we can relate to citizens more directly. As I have said to my friends, I am empowered, as I do not have to rely on mediators to interpret and transmit my views to the public. And so, ladies and gentlemen, your task for these few days is extremely important for our entire region. The telecoms field is a highly technical and ever-changing one, which makes it very exciting, but of course also extremely demanding. You must keep abreast of it at all times, but it also means that as a region, we must pool our resources more to this effort. We ought to collaborate however we can. We cannot be left behind if we believe in the transformational power of information and communications technology to our entire socio-economic milieu. We have the knowledge of 15 years under ECTEL, and we must plan for another 15, which I am sure will be no less revolutionary as the last 15. The domain of broadband has become central to nation building, and while it will be driven largely by market competition and good regulation, the state must play its part in securing the best deal for all citizens. Government of St. Lucia is undoubtedly committed to this cause, as we could to realize an ever more connected, competitive, capable society that is driven by affordable, high-speed broadband. These are truly exciting and fascinating times. ECTEL has been a remarkable creation of regional states. It has served our sub-region well. However, it must always remember that it was created to serve the people of the region. It cannot and must not be a self-serving bureaucracy preoccupied with itself and its existence. Too often, regional entities become sclerotic and ossified. Delay and procrastination in decision-making becomes the norm rather than the exception. Regionalism must not be an excuse for indecision and inefficiency. I urge you to continue to make a difference in the lives of our people in our little world. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you, and I'm delighted to declare this conference open, and I wish you a wonderful 2 days of discussion. I now ask you for your forgiveness so that I may leave you immediately after the break to deal with other pressing issues. Thank you very much.